It started with a scream that sliced through the airport terminal like glass shattering on marble. "This man just threatened me!" The voice was shrill, trembling with rage, and echoed across Gate B like a fire alarm in a church. Heads turned, phones came out. A woman in designer sunglasses and a faux fur coat pointed a manicured finger at an older man standing calmly in line, Senator John Kennedy. But no one knew that yet. All they saw was a trembling woman, red in the face, tears welling in her eyes as she shoved her phone into the air, live streaming every second. "He pushed me," she cried, her voice cracking. "He told me to shut up. This man is dangerous." Gasps rippled through the terminal. TSA agents looked up from their posts. A mother pulled her child closer. Passengers stepped back, parting like the Red Sea around a supposed villain. And John Kennedy, still holding his boarding pass and black leather briefcase, didn't move. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her, calm, collected, as if he'd seen storms like this before and knew better than to raise his voice inside the eye. The woman's name was already trending online. Karen Witness Justice, her handle read, had over 300,000 followers. Within minutes, her stream hit 10,000 viewers, many of them commenting in real time. "OMG," one wrote. "Is that old guy drunk?" Another said, "He needs to be arrested now." A man nearby muttered under his breath, "Crazy old folks think they can do whatever." But not a single person asked to see what happened before the stream started. Not one. That's the thing about viral moments. They don't wait for the full picture. They just explode, fueled by outrage and assumptions, and the damage spreads like wildfire before the first fact catches up. Karen was crying now, on cue, as two TSA officers approached slowly, their hands resting near their belts, their eyes darting between her and the man in the navy blazer who hadn't said a word. "Sir, can we have a word with you?" one officer asked. "What seems to be the issue?" John replied, his voice low and steady, like jazz on a rainy night. But his calm only seemed to provoke her further. "You see? He's pretending like he didn't just push me. He told me to shut my mouth and go back to the kitchen." Karen's voice cracked on the last word, and someone in the crowd gasped. The accusation was sharp, venomous, and as false as the tears slipping down her powdered cheeks. But nobody knew yet. The officers asked John to step aside. He nodded politely and followed them without protest, as Karen turned her phone around and whispered to the stream, "This is why I record everything. So men like him don't get away with it." And just like that, the narrative was set. The public villain had been chosen. But something didn't sit right. A woman at the coffee stand squinted at the scene, tilting her head. A man in a business suit whispered to his wife, "That guy looks familiar." Behind the counter, a young TSA officer glanced at his screen, blinked, and leaned in. "No way," he muttered. He typed in the man's name, matching it to the ID just scanned through security. And there it was. Senator John Kennedy. Not a random old man. Not a nobody. A man who had quietly served for decades, authored laws, mentored veterans, and helped victims of wrongful accusations. The officer's eyes widened. Meanwhile, Karen's stream climbed to 50,000 viewers. She was practically glowing with performative righteousness. "This is why women need to stand up," she said, looking directly into the camera. "We're done being silent." But as she filmed herself grinning in victory, she didn't notice the gate agent walking toward TSA with a printed report in her hand. She didn't see the security footage being pulled. She didn't see the cracks forming in her perfect story. If you're still watching right now, I need you to pause for a second and ask yourself, what would you have believed in that moment? Be honest. Would you have judged him based on what she said, or would you have waited for the full truth to surface? If you're someone who believes the truth still matters, drop a 9 in the comments right now, and let's see how many people still value facts over viral fame. Because trust me, this story is just getting started. And what happens next will flip everything you thought you knew about justice, identity, and the dangers of a camera in the wrong hands. Karen paced like a performer between acts, adjusting her phone angle, brushing invisible specks from her coat, her tears now dry but her drama dialed to 10. "He's being questioned now," she whispered to her live stream with a hint of triumph. "TSA's taking it seriously. I told you guys, I don't just make noise, I make things happen." Comments flooded in like a tidal wave. "Queen energy. Expose him. That guy looks guilty F." She smirked, turning toward the interrogation room door like she was waiting for a verdict she already knew. But beyond that door, the script was slipping out of her hands, one quiet detail at a time. Inside, John Kennedy sat with his hands clasped, his eyes steady, saying little unless asked. The TSA supervisor, Officer Ramirez, reviewed his ID again. "Senator?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes," John replied simply. "But I'd prefer to be treated like any citizen." Ramirez blinked, realizing the calm, polite man in front of him wasn't just someone with a title. He was someone who had no need to prove it. Still, protocol demanded review. Another officer entered with a tablet. "Sir, we've pulled gate surveillance," he said. Ramirez watched silently as the footage began. There it was, in full color. Karen yelling at a gate agent over a delay. John had simply walked up to check the boarding screen. Karen, feeling slighted, spun around and snapped, "Are you cutting me?" John had replied, "Not at all, ma'am, just checking my gate." That was it. Her response? She stepped forward and flung her half-empty coffee cup at his shoes. Gasps rippled through the office. The rest unfolded in chilling silence. Karen pulling out her phone, changing her tone instantly, and beginning the performance she now had tens of thousands watching live. Ramirez leaned back, sighing deeply. She lied. The room fell quiet. John didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply said, "I've learned never to mistake volume for truth." Ramirez stood and walked to the door. "Excuse me a moment, Senator." But John corrected him again, gently. "Just John is fine." Outside, Karen was still performing. "They're probably building a case," she said into her camera. "This is how justice works when you speak up." Then the door opened. Ramirez stepped out with 2 more agents, but this time they weren't looking at John, they were looking at her. "Ma'am," Ramirez began, "we've reviewed the full security footage and—" Karen cut him off. "Great, so you'll see you tried to intimidate me, right?" Her voice rose again, but the usual confidence was flickering. "Actually," Ramirez said calmly, "we saw you throw your drink at him and falsely accuse him of aggression. That is considered disorderly conduct and filing a false report in a federal facility." Karen froze, eyes darting around, suddenly aware of the sea of phones now recording her. The power she'd wielded seconds ago turned on her like a mirror, cracking in slow motion. Her lips parted, but no sound came. "Wait," she said. "This has to be a mistake." But another officer stepped forward. "You're being escorted off the premises. You're also being placed under temporary travel restriction pending review." Gasps broke out around the gate. The mother with the child shook her head. The man in the suit who had muttered earlier turned to his wife and whispered, "Told you that guy looked familiar." Karen reached for her phone, tried to shut the stream off, but her hands were shaking now. In the final moments of her broadcast, she looked directly into the lens. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "I was just trying to—" Then the screen went dark. Meanwhile, John stepped back into the terminal with quiet dignity. He didn't ask for cameras, didn't look for applause. He simply moved toward his gate, and helped an elderly woman lift her bag into the overhead bin. A gate agent whispered, "I'm so sorry about all this." He nodded. "It's okay. I've seen worse when people let fear get louder than facts." But the airport wasn't quiet anymore. The truth had found its way to the surface, like it always does. Slow, steady, undeniable. And as the crowd watched Karen being led away, one man said what everyone else was thinking. She thought the phone gave her power. Turns out, it gave her away. The ripple effect was only just beginning. And what would happen over the next few hours online would flip everything. Because justice doesn't always knock. Sometimes it whispers. The storm didn't end when Karen was escorted out of the terminal. It only changed direction. Within an hour, her original live stream was clipped, reshared, and dissected by dozens of creators. Side-by-side comparisons emerged, showing her TikTok live against the airport's official security footage. The truth wasn't just coming out. It was flooding every platform. And the internet? It didn't forgive staged outrage nearly as easily as it had applauded it. One creator zoomed in on her body language before she started recording. "Look at her expression. This isn't fear, this is performance," the voiceover explained, pausing on the exact frame she turned from angry to vulnerable for the camera. Another post titled, "Karen Gets Exposed for Lying About a U.S. Senator at the Airport," hit 2 million views in less than 3 hours. Commenters poured in. "I believed her at first. Now I feel sick. This could have ruined his life. How many times has she done this and gotten away with it?" It was a digital reckoning. Meanwhile, Senator John Kennedy sat quietly in the airport lounge, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. A young TSA agent approached him nervously, holding a piece of paper and a pen. "Sir, Mr. Kennedy, could I, maybe get your signature?" John looked up, smiling gently. "Only if you promise to stay in school and always check both sides of a story." The kid nodded like he'd just been knighted. Behind the scenes, however, the airport's legal and PR departments were scrambling. Karen wasn't just a random outburst anymore. She was a potential lawsuit waiting to happen. But more pressing was the backlash. Passengers who had witnessed the incident began sharing their own footage. One traveler posted a clip from earlier that day, Karen berating a barista at the coffee kiosk, yelling about her lactose-free order being wrong. "This is not new behavior," the caption read. "I was standing right there." The media picked it up fast. By evening, number Karen at Gate B was trending globally. News anchors debated whether viral accusations had gone too far in today's culture of instant judgment. Headlines read, "Senator John Kennedy remains calm amid false airport accusation," and "TSA confirms woman lied, faces charges after livestream fallout." But John didn't call a press conference. He didn't post a statement. He didn't tweet. His silence spoke louder than outrage. The next morning, Karen uploaded a shaky, dimly lit apology video to her account. "I was stressed," she sniffled. "I felt unsafe, and I reacted emotionally. I didn't mean to harm anyone's reputation." Comments were turned off. Likes were disabled. But screen recordings of the apology went viral anyway, mostly with reactions calling it hollow, too late, or the most performative thing she's ever posted. Meanwhile, across the country, something unexpected was happening. Emails began pouring into Senator Kennedy's office, not from lobbyists or political allies, but from everyday people. A nurse from Detroit, a schoolteacher from Phoenix, a teenager from Florida who had once been accused of something he didn't do and never got the chance to explain. "I watched the video," one email read, "and I've never seen someone stay that calm while the whole world tried to tear them down." "Thank you." Another said, I was raised to speak only when you have something true to say. Watching you reminded me that decency still exists. Inside the Capitol, John Kennedy read each message carefully. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He was thoughtful, aware, because beneath the viral moment, beyond the trending hashtags and media noise, there was something deeper rising to the surface, a conversation long overdue. That afternoon, as he left his office for a scheduled flight back to Louisiana, a reporter approached him outside the building. "Senator Kennedy, do you have anything to say about the incident at the airport?" Cameras clicked, microphones angled in. He paused for a moment, then nodded. "Only this," he said. "The truth always takes longer to load than the lie, but when it shows up, it clears the room." Then he turned and walked away. The nation watched. Some applauded, some stayed quiet. But nearly everyone felt something shift. Because this story wasn't just about a Karen or a senator or an airport. It was about how close we all are to becoming a headline, a hashtag, a victim of someone else's version of the truth. And for once, the quiet man who said very little had said everything that needed to be said. 3 days later, the fallout wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. Karen's face had become a meme, her voice clipped into reaction videos where people lip-synced her meltdown at Gate B. One video even set her infamous line, "This man is dangerous," to dramatic movie music, ending with a montage of Senator Kennedy helping an old woman with her suitcase and offering his seat to a tired mother with a crying toddler. The internet had made up its mind. And it wasn't just laughing. It was learning. Commentators weren't just dragging Karen. They were dissecting the culture that created her. A viral tweet read, "The airport incident with Senator Kennedy is a masterclass in why calm leadership beats performative outrage. Every single time." But while the internet churned, Senator Kennedy had already moved on. He was back in Louisiana, touring a local community center, speaking to veterans about housing support, not once bringing up the incident. A journalist followed him, asking why he hadn't made a public statement. John just smiled and said, "You don't need to shout the truth when the whole world already heard it." Behind closed doors, though, other voices were rising. Karen's employer, a mid-size marketing firm, released a statement. "We do not condone false accusations or behavior that endangers others. Effective immediately, Ms. Name Redacted is no longer employed with our company." Her sponsors pulled out. Her social media accounts were flooded with requests for accountability. Even her own followers began turning on her. "You made us believe you. We defended you. You played us," one comment read before the account went private. But perhaps the most unexpected moment came when Karen's own sister, a teacher in Portland, posted a heartfelt TikTok. "I'm ashamed," she said, holding back tears. "I warned her. I told her not to chase fame through false stories. And now her face is everywhere, for all the wrong reasons." The post went viral for an entirely different reason. It humanized the shame, the regret, the aftermath that no viral moment can ever clean up. Meanwhile, the security footage was officially released to the public. News outlets aired the full incident with a split screen showing Karen's version side by side. One analyst said, "This is not just a lie caught on camera. It's a lesson in how fast society jumps to judgment without proof." Morning talk shows invited psychologists to explain what makes some people perform as victims for attention, and why society is quick to believe loud over calm. One expert put it bluntly. Senator Kennedy's quiet dignity was the only anchor in a storm of viral noise. At the same time, more airport witnesses began speaking up, not in tweets, but in long, thoughtful essays and podcast interviews. One traveler, a college professor, said, "What struck me most wasn't how John Kennedy defended himself. It's that he didn't. He stood in truth like it was armor. And that silence said more than any viral response could. Another, a flight attendant who watched the whole thing unfold, shared a clip of Kennedy offering to help a disabled veteran to their seat moments after the incident. He didn't grandstand, he didn't make a scene, he just did what was right, like it was second nature. And perhaps that's why the story refused to die. Because in a world fueled by shock value, someone like John Kennedy, who didn't yell, didn't tweet, didn't retaliate, became the most unexpected kind of hero. The kind who wins not by fighting back louder, but by standing still long enough for the lie to collapse on its own weight. But justice wasn't finished yet. As legal review began on Karen's actions, TSA confirmed they were submitting a formal report to federal authorities for making a false statement in a secure facility. While she wasn't being dragged out in handcuffs, she wasn't walking away untouched either. The consequences were slow, methodical, and thorough. And for once, the internet didn't demand more. It was satisfied with the truth catching up and overtaking the lie. John Kennedy sat quietly in his hotel room that evening, flipping through emails from people all over the country. One caught his eye, a mother in Texas. She wrote, "I teach my kids to stay calm, to speak with dignity, and they always ask me if that still matters in this world. I showed them your video. Now they believe it does." He read it twice. Then he closed his laptop, stood by the window, and watched the city lights flicker across the water. No headlines, no spotlight, just a man who chose to do nothing. And somehow that changed everything. The real turning point came not from a breaking news segment or an official press release, but from a moment so simple it almost slipped past unnoticed. A child no older than 9 stood up during a small town hall in Lafayette, where Senator Kennedy had agreed to speak. The room was packed with teachers, veterans, parents, small business owners, and quietly in the back, news crews who had followed him since the airport incident. The boy raised his hand, clutching a notebook to his chest. "Senator Kennedy," he said with a shy but steady voice, "how come you didn't yell back at the lady who lied?" The room fell quiet, and for the first time that day, even the cameras stopped rolling. Everyone leaned in. John Kennedy stepped down from the podium, walked over to the boy, and knelt to his level. "That's a good question," he said, placing a gentle hand on the kid's shoulder. "Because yelling back never makes the truth louder. It just makes the world noisier." The audience didn't clap right away. They just sat with it, feeling the weight of those words settle like dust after a storm. But the story wasn't just lingering in quiet conversations or public forums anymore. It had reached the highest levels of social discourse. Think pieces flooded national magazines. The Atlantic ran a feature titled "The Power of Restraint in a World Addicted to Reaction." Podcasts across the country began referencing the Kennedy Airport moment as a case study in integrity. On social media, a movement quietly began. Hashtags like #CALMISPOWER and #TRUTHOVERVIRAL started to trend. Influencers with millions of followers, previously known for dance challenges and prank videos, began stitching clips of Kennedy's silent composure with captions like, "This is the energy we need more of." But what no one expected was for Karen herself to reappear. Not through a lawyer, not through a spin doctor, but in a raw, unfiltered YouTube video posted from what appeared to be her parents' living room. Her hair was undone. Her face was bare. The woman who once weaponized a live stream now stared into the lens with a haunted expression. "I lied," she said softly. "I knew what I was doing. I was angry. I was looking for someone to blame. And I thought if I cried first, people would believe me." She paused, swallowing hard. "I didn't think he'd stay so calm. I didn't think he'd forgive me silently, without saying a word. But he did. and I have to live with the fact that I almost ruined someone because I couldn't control my own ego." The video exploded, not in outrage, but in uncomfortable reflection. People began commenting things like, "This hit me harder than I expected." "I've been Karen before, in smaller ways. We've all let emotion speak before truth." And while the video didn't undo what she'd done, it did something rare in today's culture. It sparked humility. The next day, Senator Kennedy was walking through a public library in New Orleans when a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "You don't know me," she said, "but I believed her. I judged you, and now I can't sleep at night because I saw how wrong I was." John didn't look angry. He simply nodded and replied, "Then you've already made it right." Later that evening, as dusk wrapped the sky in soft amber light, John stood on the balcony of his modest hotel overlooking the Mississippi River. He wasn't writing a speech. He wasn't checking headlines. He was reading a letter, a handwritten one from a high school student in Oregon. "I watched the video over and over," the letter read. "And what got me wasn't the lie. It was how you didn't flinch. I have anxiety. I always think if I don't yell back, I'll lose. But watching you made me realize I don't have to match someone's chaos to prove I'm right." He folded the letter, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and stared into the horizon. In the end, it wasn't justice through the courts or a viral takedown that mattered most. It was the ripple effect. A boy asking a hard question, a woman owning up to her lie, a teenager choosing calm over panic. This story had become bigger than one lie at an airport. It had become a quiet revolution in how we respond, how we carry ourselves, and how we reclaim truth in a world too quick to shout. And somewhere, far away from the noise, Senator John Kennedy whispered into the wind, "Sometimes, the strongest voice is the one that doesn't rise." A week later, the airport incident had faded from the front page, but it hadn't faded from people's hearts. Across the country, something had shifted. School teachers began using the story in classrooms, not to talk about politics or justice, but to teach emotional control. A sixth-grade teacher in Minnesota played the footage side by side with the apology video and asked her students, which moment had more power, the scream or the silence? A young girl raised her hand and said, "The silence," because it made us think. In coffee shops, churches, and college campuses, conversations bloomed about how we respond when we're accused, about how fast the world jumps to conclusions, about whether calm is weakness or strength. And in all those conversations, Senator John Kennedy became something no one had planned for him to be, a symbol, not of office or title, but of restraint, patience, and the power of letting the truth breathe. And still, he said nothing. No tour, no book deal, no merch line. Just a quiet presence moving through his community, shaking hands, asking questions, and listening more than he spoke. The story followed him, not because he chased it, but because people brought it with them. A woman in Shreveport stopped him at a diner, tears in her eyes. "You reminded me of my father," she whispered. "He was a quiet man, too, the kind that let the facts speak first." That same night, John received an unexpected phone call from a retired judge. "You know," the old man said, "we spend a lifetime writing opinions, citing precedent, quoting laws. But what you didn't do, may have taught more people about justice than any court ruling ever could." John paused, humbled. "I wasn't trying to teach anything," he said. "I was just trying not to make it worse." And maybe that was the point. Because in a world that glorifies reaction, where louder often means more believable, where outrage spreads faster than facts, where we rush to judgment like it's a sport, this story stood still. It didn't roar. It didn't rage. It waited. And in that waiting, it became something timeless. Online, a new phrase quietly took root. Be a Kennedy. It wasn't about politics. It was about posture, about what it means to hold your ground without raising your fist. TikTok creators began posting short videos with the caption, "Don't be a Kennedy," showing moments of grace under fire. Kids being bullied who walked away without a word, store clerks staying calm during customer meltdowns, fathers explaining things gently to their screaming toddlers, a whole movement of subtle, everyday strength. And it all started with a man who didn't flinch when the world pointed a camera at his face and called him a villain. As for Karen, she disappeared from the internet, at least for now. Some say she moved home. Some say she's going to therapy. Some hope she finds a way to grow from the ashes. But John Kennedy never spoke badly about her, never mocked her, never posted a quote tweet or called her out by name. When asked about her at a local fundraiser, he simply said, "She was wrong. And now she knows it. That's enough." That moment, like so many others, became a quiet lesson. Because at its heart, this wasn't a story about revenge. It wasn't about reputation. It was about reminding people that character isn't something you post. It's something you reveal when the world isn't watching, or when it's watching too closely. And maybe that's the legacy of what happened at Gate B. Not a scandal, not a meme, not a headline, but a quiet, steady answer to a question we've all been asking lately. Can dignity survive in a viral world? It can. It did. And it walked out of that airport, briefcase in hand, without saying a single harsh word. Now it's your turn. When the pressure's on, when someone lies, when the camera is rolling, will you shout to prove you're right, or will you stand still and let the truth do the talking? If you made it to the end of this story, tell us in the comments. What would you have done if you were him? Or better yet, what will you do next time?